Yeah.
I often draw parallels between my military service and me as a financial planner. And like, tell people, unfortunately, I'm really good at leading people through scary times,
Yeah.
right? I had to do it time and time again through my military service. And never did I forget the fact, like, as much as the mission matters, mission first, like that's the mentality of every U.S. Army or military person, mission first. But in this weird relationship of mission first, in this world, like in that world, you also understand like the people matter the most.
Sure.
And so if I'm asking a group of guys to go do something incredibly dangerous and scary, I have to remember that they're still human beings.
Yeah.
They're going to do what I ask them to do because mission first, but I have to think about how they're going to function as people. And the only way to get through that successfully is to have that relationship with somebody that will give hugs, not lectures. All right, Bill.
Welcome back.
Money therapy. We got an exciting episode for you guys today. Bill, I want to talk about a down market playbook.
Perfect time.
We are just seeing a ton of geopolitical unrest.
Yeah.
We're going into an election year,
Yeah.
and it is it just feels like I mean, by nature of what our Federal Reserve's trying to do to combat inflation, we are in fact moving into a slower economy.
Yeah.
By design.
Yeah.
We're navigating the waters pretty well for all the circumstances given.
Yeah.
But it just seems like one of those times where, the next straw is the one that breaks the camel's back, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of clients that are nervous. I talk to a lot of people that have questions about the U.S. debt. We just had our fiscal U.S. GDP stuff come in, and we had, what was it, like another $1.7 trillion deficit. There's a lot of concerns about the value of the dollar, where to go to hide out. And, the question is what people are really saying is, I'm nervous because I don't know what the future looks like right now. I know what I want.
Yeah.
I know what I need the future to look like, but I don't know what it looks like. And generally that question surfaces when things are a little bit more scary, right?
Yeah. There's some palpable uncertainty, especially through this last year. We're coming down, obviously, the last quarter of the year here. And the one thing that I've noticed, and it's been very much a different year in my career as a financial planner, but it's very interesting in that, usually when we have a pretty good year in the stock market, people are pretty positive about it. They talk about it. They, talk to me about it. This year is one of those years where we've had so much volatility, so much unrest in the geopolitical realm, all those reasons that you just named. There's so much volatility in the market that even though the S&P 500 and the Dow are both positive this year, and we have had positive returns in the markets, it almost doesn't seem like that. And it almost feels like people are waiting for that other shoe to drop. And they, like I said, it's very palpable. You can definitely feel the uncertainty in the air. People are, it's hard to get people back into the market right now. My biggest conversation that I'm having with clients right now is this is the time to get into the market. We're going to talk about this throughout the episode, but trying to influence them to take that step and start investing back into the market. But everyone's kind of on pause right now.
Yeah. And I've been using a lot of money markets, right? Clients are asking a lot of questions about CDs.
Sure.
Those feel very safe. Of course, there's always risk, and we talk about things like reinvestment risk. So just as much as there is volatility risk in the equity markets or bond markets, there's also like there's reinvestment risk. There's like a quality risk of certain debt instruments.
Sure.
And there's a lot of pressure right now on banks in across the United States because of the 500% increase on Fed fund rates that is stressing out banks. So even some of these CDs have some liquidity risk. They more so than even normal, right?
Sure.
So risk is everywhere. My email that I sent out, that basically the whole thing is, we're really trying to talk about, the episode, the podcast episode is the down market playbook.
Yeah.
But really what we're talking about is I want to start with kind of the philosophical piece, and then we'll move into some of the actionable things.
Sure.
But first of all, a really critical point that I want to make sure everybody understands is your perspective is yours, and you get to decide what that is. So in one hand, like you get to decide if you want to focus on the days ahead or the decades ahead.
Yeah. I
Right.
like that.
And that is so important because what the whole entire financial ecosystem that we have to live in tells us to focus on the days ahead. For so many people, it is an incredibly hard bridge to cross to go from thinking about the next few days to thinking about the next few decades.
Right.
And most people even kind of laugh at the idea. They're like, Brandon, I don't even know how I'm going to make it to payday, let alone 30 years from now.
There's a lot of people out there who are in that position.
And then we turn on the news, and the news is telling us to focus on right now. The emails that we get, they're telling us to focus on right now.
Yeah.
So, the social media, the reels, all this stuff, focus on right now.
Yeah.
I think that we can live in the present, but leverage like living now
Yeah.
to facilitate greater thought about our future. And I just want everyone to take some time, whether it's, for the rest of the day, hopefully several days or weeks, even to think about how do I start focusing on decades, not days, especially when it comes to investments, because Warren Buffett himself said that time is the investor's best friend, right? So days, not decades. Another piece that I want you guys to focus on before we do it to you is the number one thing that you need during a down market, and this is kind of a play on a picture that was drawn, is this notion that people, it was a chart of what people need during a down market.
Sure.
And the number one thing that people need, it said, was hugs.
Okay.
Right. And then there was like a little bit, like the chart was big for hugs. It was quite a bit less for like facts. And then it was negative for lectures.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to talk about some of this stuff, but please understand
So we're going to lecture people.
so we're going to give a lecture. We're going to give facts. We are going to give some facts in this. But what I want you guys to understand, what I think people need to understand most is like during scary times, you need somebody with you that can be an empathetic leader. I think that is most critical.
Yeah.
I often draw parallels between my military service and me as a financial planner, and like tell people, unfortunately, I'm really good at leading people through scary times.
Yeah.
Right. I had to do it time and time again through my military service, and never did I forget the fact, like as much as the mission matters, mission first, like that's the mentality of every U.S. Army or military person, mission first. But in this weird relationship of mission first, in this world, like in that world, you also understand like the people matter the most.
Sure.
And so if I'm asking a group of guys to go do something incredibly dangerous and scary, I have to remember that they're still human beings.
Yeah.
They're going to do what I ask them to do because mission first, but I have to think about how they're going to function as people. And the only way to get through that successfully is to have that relationship with somebody that will give hugs, not lectures.
Yeah.
Right. So those two, there's the philosophical piece, right?
Yeah.
The philosophical piece, let's get it out of the way. Let's start by just saying, what you need most as you're maneuvering in and through a down market is you need to remember you're in charge of your perspective. Viktor Frankl, he wrote the book, was it A Man's Search for Meaning, I believe? Okay. And he was in a Nazi concentration camp. Yeah. And basically he said the one thing that they can't take away from me is how I see things. Yeah. And I'm going to choose to see everything as hopeful. Yeah. He's like, that's the only freedom. He's that they can take my food. They can lock me into a prison. They can, murder me if they want. But they can't change the fact that I get to choose how I see things. So perception matters. We're going to focus on decades, not days. Yeah. Right. And then the other piece is that empathetic leader companion to, help us focus on hugs and facts and not lecture us and tell us we're ridiculous for what we're thinking. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'd say something practical off of that I like to do with some of my clients, especially in times, when we're talking about palpable uncertainty and also in the same thread of, maturing that relationship between the coach and the trainee, if you will, which oftentimes is our relationship with people. Like you said, in the military, I need to learn how this person reacts during times of stress. So one of the things that I like to do is do a risk tolerance questionnaire in times of uncertainty like now. Most of the time, that's when the emotion of things is going to come out pretty heavy. I'm sure that, Brandon, you've had this as well, but when times are really good and I do a risk tolerance questionnaire with somebody, they're like, oh yeah, man, pedal to the metal. I'm a 9 out of 10, a 10 out of 10. Like I understand the market goes up and down. That's no problem. Don't worry. Let's go. Let's really grow this money. I've heard that 1,000 times. And then when we have times like this, where it's real rocky up and down, they get to a 4 or 5 pretty quick, and they're very much like, man, what do you think's going to happen? Should I cash out? A lot of emotion emits. And so I like to do risk tolerance questionnaires in both of those times to really get a read on how this person reacts, so that when times are really good, we're not getting out over our skis. And when times are bad, or we're in a recession or whatever it is, we're not panic selling. Yeah. Maybe we're reevaluating things, but we're not letting emotions take over. That's the biggest, I think, benefit of working with a professional, is being able to come to somebody who's unbiased, who has your best interest at heart, and that can objectively tell you, okay, I understand your perspective and I understand how you see things and how you want to react, but I'm going to reiterate what's the best thing for you to do. Yeah,
I think, the risk tolerance profiling, asking ourselves how much risk do we want in our portfolio. I love that you started there, because that's kind of a great segue to transition from the philosophical to things that we can actually do. I just watched the Formula One race yesterday in Texas, and just thinking about how a client that comes in, towards the end of a bull market is ready to drive like Hamilton. Like he's ready to push it 160 miles an hour around like 90-degree turns. He's ready to go. But then all of a sudden, you get into a volatile, uncertain time, and now the same person's wanting to drive, like grandma. Yeah. Right. So you go from Formula One race car driver to, grandma on a Sunday morning cruising around town. The key piece to this that I want to stress, and I think it's very, very important, everybody's a little bit different, right? So you can't really take anything that we're giving as like personal advice. This is more just us trying to educate you on things to consider. With that said, though, is I've had clients come in, we measure risk tolerance and speed limit signs, right? So they'll come in and hey, they're a 99 mile an hour risk tolerance. They're out of 100. They're ready to go. Pedal to the metal. Let's grow this thing. Uncertainty, volatility, all of a sudden now they're wanting to drive 45.
Yeah.
What I tell them is we need to make a note of that. I want to stress the fact that I don't condone, very, very, very seldomly, do I condone changing strategies while the market is down. So if we decide that you were 99 before and now today we're realizing you're 45, we can start to switch to that 45 mile an hour profile, like portfolio, once we get out of this like bottom.
Yeah.
Right. We
like,
don't
remember that for next time.
We are. Yeah. So as an advisor to a client, I'm going to make notes of that. I'm going to remind them during like an annual review or something, hey, we'll adjust this now that we're back to a market high. Yeah. And guess what? They're probably not going to want to, right? So I'll have to, that's again, hey, you went through this once, you were stressed, you were losing sleep. We're definitely de-risking if you're going to continue to work with me. So I think that's really important.
Yeah.
The biggest number one, so before, like that was on my number 2 list, revisit your risk profile. Number 1 is do not panic.
Yeah.
Right? Everything that we're about to talk about are things to do during a down market, like actionable things that you can do.
Yeah.
But you have to start by saying, I am not going to panic.
Right.
Right? It is we can move into a 2-minute offense, a 2-minute drill, but we do not panic, right? Correct. So, in the Army, we'd always say slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? Mm-hmm. Like you have to stay in control and make logical decisions and not panicked, fear-driven decisions.
Sure.
And you have to, and the biggest thing, and I wrote this down, is you have to know how to be honest with yourself, because we are really, really good at lying to ourselves.
Oh,
we're better at lying to ourselves than we are to other people. I'm convinced of that, unless you're a sociopath listening and come in and visit, because that'd be cool to meet someone. That's a true sociopath. I've never met that person. We'd really get into some of that therapy side of the money therapy. But the point is like, I can tell myself sometimes I'm doing something logical.
Yeah.
But the only reason I got to this point of my logical decision making is because I've been making it based off of fear. Yeah. Or on the flip side, on a good day, out of greed, right?
Yeah.
So again, this is why it's so important to have somebody, that empathetic leader, to sit down and be like, hey, you're making sense, but facts are a liar's best friend.
Yeah.
Right? So while these are all true, they're not good for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, one thing I like to jump right off of that, one thing to give, some like a quick practical tip here, something that I do with clients is when we're in times like these and they say things, and they're feeling that emotion and things, I try and put things, again, back to the days versus decades, try and put things in perspective and tell, let's say I'm talking to a 25-year-old person and, want to retire around 65. I literally tell them, straight in their eye, I'm like, today's prices are not your prices. Mm-hmm. Those prices are 40 years in the distance. Okay, so let's not panic about what the TV says today, because that doesn't make any sense. We're going to be in a completely different place in 40 years from now.
Yeah.
That's why we develop a plan. We look at risk tolerance. We look at portfolio structures. We focus on keeping you on the roller coaster and keeping you investing, because we know that, knowing what we know, that the market's probably going to do well over a long period of time, that should give us a little perspective to not panic within a 2-week period.
Yeah, I wrote down we were talking about that in show prep, and I just wrote down, you're allowed to say no. And what came to mind is, like, you bought a house recently.
Yeah.
We don't need to put your business out there, but let's just pretend, easy math, right? You bought this house for $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you purchased the house at $1 million. Now let's just say that, for example,
Yeah.
in the past year since you bought it, the price has appreciated in your area. We'll say 10%. So now it's 1.1 million.
Yeah.
Is like what the appreciated value is.
Yeah.
Right. So I purchased for $1 million. The market suggests it's 1.1, but I show up at your door and I offer you $250,000. Like I write a check, put your name on it, sign it, and extend my arm.
Yeah.
So my question that I always ask clients is, what is your house worth right at that moment? What is your house worth? Is it because there's 4 options that you get to choose. Mm-hmm. Again, your perception is your reality.
Yeah.
So you can say, no, I bought it for $1 million, so my home is worth $1 million.
Yeah.
You could say, no, there's been appreciation, so now my home is worth $1.1 million.
Yeah.
Right? You could say, no, my home is only worth $250,000 because that's the real offer I have right now.
Yeah.
Or you could say, no, none of those things. It's actually going to be worth $1.5 or $2 million in the next 10 to 20 years when I plan on moving again.
Yeah.
Right? So the question is I would argue that the value of your home is always going to be the offer on the table. Right? So if I buy a stock for $100 a share, and today the market is suggesting it's worth $90 a share, that stock is only worth $90 a share. Yeah. However, there is a perceived value. And the perceived value should be based on your homework, on your time horizon, on the company, right? So if I think my time horizon suggested this investment was going to be, 5 to 7 years in the making, right? Especially like if we're thinking like, hey, I'm buying a small cap company that I think is going to like really turn out. It's a newer company. And I really think in the next 5 to 7 years, this leadership is going to take this company to a great place.
Yeah.
Of course, if it's a newer company, it's going to be volatile.
Yeah.
But so even though the price tag might have changed today for new people purchasing the share, you didn't buy it for today. Your point, you bought it for the future. Mm-hmm. And whatever that timeline looks like, that's what matters. So a couple things, since we're going to revisit the risk profile, I also want to revisit our homework that we did. I want to revisit the decisions that we made, the investments that we made. Now, this is where it comes to the point. Like, don't panic, but I'm not suggesting you never sell.
Yeah.
Right? Because there are times where some things we go through, for example, an interest rate change where we're in a restrictive interest rate, we're in a restrictive economy right now. Mm-hmm. Bonds are worth a lot more than they were a year ago. Mm-hmm. Getting to access to capital is harder, not just for us, but for companies too. Mm-hmm. So maybe some assumptions I made a year ago have changed enough to where this investment is no longer a viable decision.
Yeah.
We can sell if we've done our homework. So revisit your homework, but also before you get there, revisit your goals. Yeah. Because if I would bet your values and your goals should not change just because of a market or economic cycle.
Yeah.
And if you start there, right? If it is important to me as a dad to pay for my daughter's wedding one day, it should not change just because the market's down 20%.
Yeah.
Right? If that's a real important goal, or if my values drive me, they shouldn't shift just because we're in a restrictive versus an accommodating economy. Yeah. So in that sense, if I start there, I'm forcing myself to remember why. Yeah. Why am I doing this stuff, right?
Yeah, and a quick half step back in reference to the part where we were saying do your homework. And, we don't have to sell, but do your homework. I'm not telling you never sell, but do your homework. I've talked about this in an earlier episode, but one of like a real quick tip in order to help you in that season when you're doing your homework is every day ask yourself if you'd buy that stock, that small cap company, whatever it is, again today. Because every time you decide not to sell something, it's the same decision as choosing to buy it, right?
Right.
Because you still own it. So yeah, I bought that stock at 100. Now it's worth 90. Would I still buy it at this price?
And if you say yes, you might be able to buy more, right?
Yeah, maybe it's absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, this thing is, or, you know, maybe even further than that. Maybe it's down to 60. And
if I was buying it at 100, why wouldn't I buy it at 60? And
exactly.
like sometimes I think we just overcomplicate this. Like if I went to the store, if I needed jeans and I was like, man, I'm going to have to spend $80 on a pair of jeans.
Yeah.
And I went to the store and I found out they were like on sale and they were going to be $50. I'd be stoked about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
I wouldn't be upset that I bought jeans a couple months ago for 80.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I'm going to buy two.
And you wouldn't take the jeans to the clerk at the front and say, hey, give me a call when these jeans are back to $80.
Right. Exactly. So sometimes it's just that simple. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the fact that, so there are some real things that can, I think, increase our wealth
Yeah.
if we do things right during down markets. Okay. So
Sure.
again, a lot of that is assessing ourselves, right? So we went from like this philosophical thing of like, perception and like days or decades and, you know, hugs, not lectures.
Yeah.
All right. Into some like things that we actually can do to make ourselves better investors and make sure like it will help us avoid making like money missteps, right? Panic, fear. But now I think there's some things that we can do to actually help increase our wealth.
Yeah.
All right. So, and we're going to wrap up, but I got a couple more things that I think are really important for you guys to hear. So first of all, understand everything that we talk about in this space. I would encourage you to reach out to a financial professional or a tax professional. If you have a tax professional, consult them before doing this stuff because everybody's situation is so different. But if you have an account that is a taxable investment account, this is your typical brokerage account that you buy stocks and bonds in. As you are in the depths of a downturn, oftentimes there are losses that you can generate on the account by selling some stuff. Now, again, two different things. Some things we're not selling just to create losses, right? That's the whole like wag the tax dog tail thing. I don't know that. You know what I'm talking about? Like wag the dog, wag the tail.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You don't wag the tax tail for, I don't know. Anyway, I butchered that really bad. But there is a point. There is a point, and I think a lot of people listening will understand what I'm getting at there.
Yeah, I think we all understand.
They're probably yelling
just
at.
Doesn't make any sense.
Let me know how I butchered that. You can send an email. But the point is if we've redone our homework, and we've decided, hey, this is no longer a good company.
Sure,
I can sell that at a loss. And that is the practice of tax loss harvesting because those losses can offset future gains.
Sure.
That will save me tax money. So it could almost wash out some of my taxes, making my taxable account not as bad from a tax perspective, right? Which can keep real dollars in my account, in my wallet, versus sending them off to the IRS. So we can tax loss harvest. Now, what I am not telling you to do is just sell everything, right? We've already talked about that.
Right.
And the other thing just to keep in mind is if you're going to put that money back to work, just be careful of the wash sell rules. And again, if you're working with a financial or tax professional, there's plenty of really incredible things you can do to circumvent putting yourself in a place where you might have to pay a penalty or be penalized on taxes.
Yeah.
The other thing, if I do create money by tax loss harvesting, I sell assets at a loss.
Yeah.
This is a down market is an incredible time to transfer money from your taxable account to your qualified account, right? And why? I'll give you an easy example.
Brandon, what do you mean by qualified account?
So a taxable account, again, just a brokerage account. I pay capital gains taxes. I pay dividend or income taxes on the investments that I have, right? And if I make gains, I pay taxes. If I create losses, I can offset the gains later on.
Right.
When I move money into a qualified account is basically an account that the IRS says, hey, we're going to create some benefits for you as an investor because you're putting money away for your own retirement. So it's a subsidized account for us that basically says, hey, we're not going to only rely on Social Security when we're old because the government sees that that's problematic. So instead, they create things like, traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs, SEP IRAs, 401ks, 403bs, 457, like all these things that exist where if I put money in, there's a barrier, there's certain protections from my money being taxed, right? So I can avoid paying unnecessary taxes. Now, all of those accounts have different kind of qualifying marks, right? If I make over a certain amount of money, I may not qualify for a Roth account. If I don't have my own company, I may not be able to contribute to a SEP account.
That's
right?
why you need to consult your tax professional and a financial advisor.
Yes, very much so. So that's all it's a good question. But when we talk about qualify, we're just talking about basically, layman's term for retirement accounts.
Yeah.
And if I put money into them, then all of a sudden the capital gains from buying and selling in this are avoided. Dividend and income taxes are avoided, right? So let's call a company ABC Company. ABC Company has a stock that is on, like it's, I buy it at $100 a share. I buy, it doesn't matter. I buy one share, $100. Mm-hmm. Now, all of a sudden, during a down market, the $100 a share turns into $50 a share. Mm-hmm. So I'm at a loss.
Yeah.
Well, what I can do is if I decide to sell some stuff that I no longer need. I think ABC Company is a great company for the future.
Sure.
Right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to take those sales, I'm going to move that taxable money over into my qualified bucket, my retirement accounts, and I'm going to buy as many shares as possible of ABC Company because I know I'm getting it 50% off.
Yeah.
Right? So now it's almost as if I'm putting for example, this year, I am allowed to put, up to 65 because of my age. I'm under the age of 50. I can put up to $6,500 into my personal IRA, right? Inside of putting $6,500, since there's that cap, if I put $6,500 in and bought ABC Company at $100 a share, that's 65 shares. Is that good math? Mm-hmm. So, but since 650, yeah.
Right?
No, I think I'm right.
I think you're right too.
Yeah, it's 65. That's all right. Public math, we don't do it well.
65,700.
The point is, though, if the shares are 50% off, I can buy twice as many. So after we get out of this market downturn and we get back to recovered market, it's almost as if I've squeezed $13,000 instead of the $6,500 into my Roth account. And then we're off to the races for the next 20 years of my life.
Yeah.
Right? So down markets are a great time when appropriate and when you're advised to do so by a professional to create that tax loss harvest. But the other piece that's so beneficial is finish maxing out your qualified accounts. And again, work closely with a financial professional so you don't over contribute.
Yeah.
I want to wrap up.
Sure.
I got 5 things because we're talking like tax loss harvesting and contributing to those qualified accounts. I got 5 things that I think everybody should think about for end of the year tax planning as well. Let's take a quick break, listen to our sponsor, and then we will come back and wrap up with those 5 things. I think you'll be glad you stick around. A few years ago, I had the privilege of working with a wonderful couple that had big goals and an incredible work ethic. They made sacrifices and achieved tremendous success and even got to enjoy an early retirement. But tragically, the wife passed away after just 6 months of that retirement life. This experience shook me to the core and led me to reevaluate how I approach financial planning with my clients. I developed an ideology based on 5 pillars of fitness and happiness, and in no particular order, the pillars of finance, faith, physical and emotional well-being, and mental health. While I'm not a doctor, priest, or psychologist, I believe in the importance of addressing all of these pillars holistically alongside financial fitness. A few months ago, I decided to prioritize my own physical health. I focused on everything from eating well to sleeping better. However, I really struggled to find the right motivation to become a regular at the gym. That's when I reached out to an old friend and fitness professional, Sean Rodman. Sean has been a warfighter in the U.S. Army for 20 years. While serving, he acquired all kinds of fitness certificates and was designated to lead fitness programs for our nation's bravest warriors. Not just the fittest ones heading off to war, but also those injured and needing rehabilitation. When he retired, he started an online fitness company, Parabellum Fitness. He builds workout programs tailored to you, your goals, and even considers your old injuries. He also switches things up from week to week or month to month, so nothing ever gets old. In just a few months, I've experienced better sleep, improved mobility, increased energy, weight loss, and freedom from my old injuries. While I want my clients to achieve incredible financial success, I believe it's all for nothing if you cannot enjoy it. Go check out ParabellumFitnessLLC.com. That's ParabellumFitnessLLC.com. Follow them on Instagram or TikTok, really any social media platform. Go follow Parabellum Fitness and reach out to Sean. Set up your first month of programming, mention Money Therapy, and get 25% off. Let's not lose sight of all 5 pillars. Together, let's focus on health and happiness and put energy into creating the best possible life we can. After all, we only get one. All right. So, Bill, 5 things.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give them to you quick because we're going to wrap up right now. So the first thing, so end of the year tax planning. So we're recording this and this will be played after pretty much all the extension deadlines for every person, whether you're a business owner or individual. Your taxes should be filed at this point.
Yeah.
If they're not, get it done. You're owing some penalties at this point. So we're past our extension. So a lot of times people think, well, taxes are filed at this point. There's nothing left to do. And that is incorrect. So what we want to do at the end of the year, so for going into Q4, we're in Q4 now. I want you to, number 1, reconcile the taxes owed versus your taxes paid, right? Work with your tax professional on this. But if at this point you might be able to lower your tax withholding, if you're ahead of the game, to avoid like those large refunds when you get around to filing next year. So you might be able to lower your tax holdings, which could create better cash flow for Q4. Another thing is if you're realizing you're behind the game, you might need to increase your tax withholdings to avoid those underpayment penalties. Okay, so you want to reconcile what I owe versus what I paid, and adjust your withholdings to either create better cash flow if you're ahead of the game, or avoid underpayment penalties if you're behind. Number 2, if you've hit the Social Security income cap for FICA taxes, redirect those dollars to savings. All right. Again, bettering your cash flow situation, save a little bit more money in Q4. Work with a tax professional on deciding if you've hit that Social Security income cap for FICA. Tax loss harvesting, we already talked about that. Charitable giving. Now, with charitable giving, I want everybody to understand, a lot of times people give, but they don't necessarily give enough every year. So we look at like donor advised funds as a very strong possible solution for people that are giving consistently, but not giving like these great big grand gifts all at once.
Yeah.
Donor advised funds are a great thing to talk to a tax professional about. And then also when and if it makes sense based on talking to your tax professional, income limits and things like that, if you can, and it makes sense, Roth conversions, end of the year Roth conversions. I want to make a note that it's open enrollment, and by the time this plays, it should be closing out pretty quickly. The last piece, so take advantage of open enrollment to make sure you're paying the right amounts for all your benefits. The last piece is HSA and FSA opportunities. Just look at what you have available. There's some really, really great strategies with HSAs that you can do. But the one thing that I'd like to remind people about is FSAs do have that expiration date on those funds. So if you got a balance, you might want to make sure you use it. Again, work with your tax professional on that. So those are just 5 thoughts that I think, you need to understand that tax planning is different than filing your taxes.
Yeah.
And if you're just filing your taxes, you're probably leaving a lot of money on the table. If you're using tax planning, that is a year-round effort. So keep that in mind. That is all I got. What do you got?
No, enough said.
Enough said. Let's move on. We'll see you guys in a week. We hope you learned something valuable today. We appreciate you including us in your journey towards financial betterment. It is important to us that you know this is for educational purposes only and not to be considered specific advice for any individual listener. If something we discussed is relevant to you and you have questions about how it might be uniquely applicable to you, please discuss that with a financial professional or, of course, we are happy to have further conversations with you about your specific questions, needs, or circumstances. We welcome you to reach out to us via our website, harpethwealthpartners.com, or by emailing Brandon at bmc@harpethwealthpartners.com. Securities are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice is offered through Private Advisor Group, a registered investment advisor. Private Advisor Group and Harpeth Wealth Partners are separate entities from LPL Financial. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not to be intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult appropriate qualified professionals prior to making a decision. Investing includes risk, including fluctuating prices and loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Hypothetical examples presented are not representative of any specific investments. Your results may vary. We want to thank you for your time and we look forward to having you back next week.